back to the Death by Tyranny podcast. Back from my short-lived break, I have quite a few birthdays that stack up in my family in the beginning of October. So instead of trying to rush any podcast or just do it to do it, I decided to spend some well-needed time with the family. It's one of the few days of the year as of late that allows the schedules to align where a lot of the more important members of my family can all participate all at once to celebrate, my children and my wife. So I just decided to take that time and devote it to them because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. But I did want to get back on here for a couple of reasons. One, because it seems like every time I take a week or so off, I come back to one of the platforms, whether it be Facebook or YouTube, and I will actually have gotten some type of a community guideline strike. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was up and running. That way, if anything huge, significant comes along and I would like to let you guys know or leave my comments about the situation, that I am still able to do so. Now, in this week and a half or 2 week absent that I took, quite a few things has happened. And I just want to, I know for all the people that are finally waking up and seeing a lot of things that politics involve and a lot of the parties involved in politics uh, for what they truly are, and that's a good thing. But for all the people that are waking up, there are still just as many of those people trying to say that we are somehow supposed to accept the fact that people can be Democrat or Republican, and we should all just play along and not hold each other accountable for the actions of the party that they support and continue to help keep in power. And that's really where we're at in this country right now, is that, okay, you can be a Democrat and we can meet at Thanksgiving and not shout at each other. But at the end of the day, you're still voting and allowing a party to restrict my constitutional rights. And that's not okay. And at some point, we're going to have to hold everybody accountable on an individual level if we are to assume that we're still playing by the rules. And I know there's, for like I said, just as many people that are waking up when it comes to politics. There is still a good amount of people that refuse to believe that there is something bigger happening in our country. And you really don't have to look far, and you can say that it's misinformation or, whatever they're calling it this week. But the fact of the matter is there's just too many things that you can't disqualify if you look into them uh, one by one. One of the many things that a lot of people don't know is when it comes to our Second Amendment in this country, we are vastly restricted for even us being one of the more freer countries when it comes to gun rights. We are not allotted the freedom when it comes to the Second Amendment that our forefathers meant us to have, our God given rights, if you will. It's not what it should be for all the men and women who have died to allow us to hold on to that right over the years. And there's a lot of things that most people, I would say, unless you are really keeping track and paying attention to all the nuances in the gun community, probably don't know about. there was a big operation going on. I believe it was Operation Choke Point. That was the banking industry kind of gatekeeping a lot of gun businesses out of the playing field. And this is backdoor gun control. If you don't think that the Democratic Party, when they hold power, isn't having meetings behind closed doors to get their agenda pushed any and every way that they can, that they only play by the rules that Congress allows them to play by, you are sadly mistaken. And we all know, I would at least hope that most people know about this stabilizing brace, which I've followed for many years, even before the podcast. But it's really finally, probably most definitely, coming to a head late December, going on to the 1st of January, where they are going to open up some type of amnesty to allow you, right, by their graces, to let you register your short-barreled rifles or pistol AR-15s with the NFA. Now, they're getting away with this for a lot of different reasons, but they should not be allowed to. Just because they're giving you an opportunity to potentially and most definitely, at least open book wise, keep the biggest gun registry that our nation has ever seen. This is illegal for them to do. It's always, the government has always been prohibited from having a gun registry. And yet, for the last how many ever decades, we've allowed them to go forward with the NFA, never giving us our freedoms and liberties back from the NFA, but only adding more restrictions and obligations to include ourselves in this growing registry. Well, coming this December, if everything that they want done is done, you're probably looking at the biggest addition to the NFA, the legal gun registry, if you will, even though, like I said before, that's not a thing. There is no such thing as a legal gun registry. That is technically what the NFA is. You're potentially looking at tens of tens of millions of people that will now be tracked, not only as an individual, but individual firearms themselves will be tracked through the NFA. And how this is being allowed to continue just blows me away. And listening to a lot of podcasts, as I usually do, I've always been baffled about the thought process that goes into somebody who is truly patriotic and considers themselves a constitutionalist, how they can deny that we live in a state of tyranny, and not only that, but continue to allow it to keep going that way. And I thought it was always this hope that underneath it all, we all still are on the level, that we all still really play by the rules. We are just largely mishandled and misguided, which is one of the reasons why I say at some point we have to hold people accountable on an individual level for the votes that they cast. We're living in a day and age where you can't really hide who you vote for. It is becoming very obvious what side of the aisle people lean towards. So the people that vote for the party that is taking away your freedom of speech and your Second Amendment, those individuals must be held accountable. And they've done this with all types of things to try to manipulate your mind and your morals and your values to say, you know these people, you consider them, some part of your family, your friends, but are they truly friends if they can meet with you, have dinner, and then every November go to the voting booths and vote for a party that is going to continue and make it blatant that they want to destroy your lives? That is just not okay. But for all this a ruse to continue, I thought it might just be that these patriotic constitutionalists just have hope in the system that it will work itself out, that we are just in growing pains that we have seen throughout the many years of this country, because we are still a fairly young country, that they just hope that the system will work. They hope that when they cast their vote at the voting booth, that it will truly count, that it is not being maliciously violated. But now that I really stop and think about this almost on a daily basis, I do not think that it is hope. I think that it is fear. And it is fear maybe for a good reason, but these people, the patriotic, constitution loving Americans that they are, believe in certain values and morals. And it is because of those morals and values that we cannot continue to allow ourselves to be controlled by fear. And this isn't just on a patriotic level, it's on a religious level as well. We must look fear in its face and combat it. We must defeat evil at all cost. So why are we continuing to be ruled by fear? Is it that you don't truly think that a revolution or a civil war or civilians versus federal government, do you truly think that that is the worst case scenario because all of the violence that will instill after that process has started? Or are you letting it control you because you are afraid that the civilians cannot win that battle? And maybe that isn't the case for all of us. I know a lot of people that say that they have to believe that their vote counts for something. They don't wish a civil conflict within the states uh, because of all the loss of life. But they never stop to think about all the good that would come after. Sure, there will be a rebuilding time, a time where it seems like maybe it was the worst possible route we could have taken forward. Now, that's not to say that loss of life isn't or doesn't count for something or shouldn't be constantly driven away from, or I guess I would be driven away from. But it is to say, I truly do not believe that it is the worst case scenario. And which means it isn't the last option. The worst case scenario is that we continue to go down the path that we are going down, that we continue to let ourselves be manipulated and breaking bread with these people who consider themselves friends, who are truly enemies, that are putting people in power to destroy our lives just because of who we believe in and the rights we were given by that person. So, and it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop with continuing to let our friends and family put people in power who are destroying our lives. It is the continuance of people in power brainwashing our children. It is people in power continuing to take from the lower class and rising it above the money, anyways, not the people. It's it isn't something that is hidden that through COVID, the largest amount of wealth was transferred from the middle class to the upper 1%. That wasn't because it was the only route to go forward. It was a route that was put in there over time by evil people, by a bad party, by friends and family who voted for them to put them in power to carry out an evil agenda. It has probably forever put our country in debt. It has divided households. It has allowed them to tell us to look this way while they are doing things on the other side. That is what I believe is the worst case scenario, is to keep living and letting what is going on in our country continue. So, to me, a civil conflict, as much as it would suck for probably everyone, except maybe a few minute people like the Elon Musk of the world, I'm sure that most middle class civilians would feel it in some type of way, if not in the ultimate way, in losing their lives in battle or genocide. But what is the generations to come after keeping those constitutional rights intact and being able to continue on this great tradition that is America? What cost is too great? Now, I do not believe, other than maybe some weirdo fucking Antifa type motherfuckers, who would argue that our forefathers were lesser men. We, at least the more educated of us, the more humble of us, will gladly admit that our forefathers were much stronger and much wiser. And they seen at several points in America's beginning that the cost of a civil conflict was not too great to preserve the freedoms to pass on to us, to the generations after. The settlers here in the colonies, they didn't think that going to war with the most powerful empire in the world was too great of a cost to begin a new country, a new empire that would protect everything that was being taken away from them. So it is time that we stop lying to ourselves and saying that we are doing nothing else other than going to the voting booth and continuing to make ourselves blind every single day, going through the motions that are just monotonous because of hope. It is not because of hope. It is because of fear. I don't know if it's because people truly don't think we could win that battle, or if they are just too afraid to pay that price. But I think it is a worthy price to be paid. Now, how we get the majority of the people in this country to get all on the same board, or at least enough people all on board with the idea that we are still strong and capable enough to enter a conflict like that, I don't know how long that would take. I just know that it is something that for every other bro vet influencer podcaster that comes on and says that we have to do everything in our powers to stop, there has to be people out there that are able still, with no matter how far their reach is, are still willing to combat that idea. It still blows me away that the people who are getting on YouTube and Instagram that are arguing that this is something we is just not even an option. They are literally defeating themselves and combating our potential before it even begins, stating that to take on the federal government is absurd. Yet, the very next day, they get on their platforms to try to sell a product or some type of a course for field crafting and survival because you never know what's going to happen, when they know exactly what they are trying to say is they think at some point the federal government will become so tyrannical that they are coming, to literally kill us. That's what they're getting at. Because without that, the only thing they are truly preparing for in all of these classes are just natural disasters. And I've said it a few times now, the federal government coming to your door to kill you is probably not the most likely. Not yet, anyways. But it is the biggest threat. And that is where all these preparedness mind types, all of these tacticians that sell courses, that's where they really make their money. A concealed carry class here and there, a self defense class here and there, sure, that's how you keep the lights on. But to make themselves wealthy, they must sell the same thing that our media has sold us for probably the last 100 of years, and that is fear. They must sell you the idea that you must be the most prepared in your group, the most tactful person that you know to be able to defeat a tyrannical government. They know that is small of a chance as that is, it is becoming more and more likely, but they won't admit it out in the open. It's always this back-assed way of wording around what they actually mean. That is why all of these companies like Black Rifle, Fieldcraft Survival, it's not that what they're putting out isn't useful or entertaining. It's that they will walk you to the edge of what they are really trying to say. And then as soon as they are called out, they will backtrack it. And people see that. They see it as not genuine and being very artificial. And that is why those companies have just as much haters as they do, sycophants. And I've said it on other occasions as well. I enjoy listening to Black Rifle Coffee Podcast and Fieldcraft Survival because it is entertaining. Because some of the things that they talk about, discuss, and try to educate on are useful. But I cannot condone how many times they have walked you to that line and then backpedaled. They have said that Democrats are tyrannical, that the federal government is destroying this country, that the leaders in our military are destroying our youth that is enlisted, and making it hard for people to want to be enlisted. I listened to a podcast today where they talked about one of the biggest reasons that our military is successful is that it is a 100% voluntary army. And in the next 5 to 10 years, that might not be the case anymore because of how many people have been kicked out of the military, what they have been kicked out for, and how tyrannical their leadership has become. And they love to make podcasts which capture eyes and ears and make them profits on just that. But they will not say the importance of what we need to do. And no matter how scary or how fearful we may be, that this is the inevitable. We have reached that point in our country where at some point, whether it be today, tomorrow, or years from now, we will have to stand up to our government. So why not just say that? Why continue to, in my opinion, of course, I believe that these companies have almost grown to their potential. And now all they are doing is losing some of their more loyal fans because as we get closer to that point in time in our country, they are seeing them for just how disingenuous they truly are. And maybe they are genuine in their ideas and their morals, but even they are too afraid to come out on the internet and talk about it. Well, that is hindering our progress. That is handicapping our advantage. When you have the potential to reach so many ears and eyes, yet you disqualify us before we have even begun to fight because you won't acknowledge what you dance around in thousands of hours of podcast and media material. And honestly, truthfully, it's disappointing. It's disappointing, and the fact that I'm one of probably the only one, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are others than I that call this out will never be credited with the credit we deserve for holding not only the Democrats who are trying to destroy our lives accountable, but for the people who are making millions of dollars off of us, claiming to be on our side while they are working against us. So I think that now is the time, especially because we are almost in November and we've all heard the October surprise. And honestly, to date, at least in 2022, I've not seen anything that I would consider an October surprise. So I think it is still to come. I'm hoping it is, maybe it has happened. Honestly, that would be the best case scenario because that means that it is something that's probably not going to impact a lot of us. And with such a disastrous um, agenda and party in control of our country, I think that's really the best that we can hope for. But we can also at least try to hinder what they are trying to accomplish by their propaganda. And one of the things that has happened over this week and a half that I have taken a break from the podcast is that Joe Biden has come out and made his pleas for making weed federally legal and releasing a bunch of people from prison that had been charged with, federal drug crimes or whatever the fuck. If you at any point in time considered Joe Biden a lesser evil because of the things he's done with marijuana in the last couple of weeks, you are probably one of the stupidest motherfuckers that's still breathing. One, to say that all of the people that were pardoned and released from prison are nonviolent is just absurd. Sure, are there some nonviolent, potentially um, not bad people that were put in prison for drug crimes and marijuana specifically? Sure. But most of the people that have reached a federal level charge for marijuana probably did a lot more evil shit than what they were actually charged with. I know on a very small scale, growing up, the drug dealers that only sold marijuana also were involved in illegal firearm selling, which hurts all of the ones who are doing it legally. Not to mention how many families were disrupted by those guns later on down the line. They would pay people for stolen property, which, like I said, is really hard to track. All of the bad consequences would come and follow after that. But I can't think of a one that only sold a little pot here and there. Once they have reached the level and the amount that it would take to be federally charged for distributing marijuana, I don't necessarily think they were the evilest people in the world, but they weren't good people. They weren't saying, I've been put on this world to do better, to leave it better than what I found it, to put back more in it than I take out of it. It wasn't those people. Do they deserve to be in federal prison? It's hard to tell. But I can guarantee you that 100% of the people that Biden released for federal marijuana charges, they all weren't justified. There probably were some motherfuckers that should have stayed in there. Not only that, but it's hard telling the amount of time that they actually served in prison and what they used that time for. There are many small time criminals that go to prison and they learn how to be better criminals. And I think that the ones that were close to that point in life, whether they were going to be good or bad, could potentially be flipped into being some of the more evil people that walks amongst our society. Now, if marijuana being legalized on a federal level is your top issue, again, you're probably one of the stupider motherfuckers that actually are still breathing. I don't really care how you feel about it one way or another, but it shouldn't justify swaying your vote from any other party than the Democratic Party. They have shown that everything that they do, even if it does potentially better your life, they are only doing to appease and to try to capture votes at the last minute. It is not to better your life, and I promise you, for every one thing that may be considered a good thing, they have done 100 other things that will make your life worse. I talked about this on another podcast where a couple years ago, it felt like we were actually making it somewhere as a country on an individual level, me personally in life, all the ways to all of that time, effort being spent and bettering myself and finally making it to a point where I felt like I was gaining traction, actually moving forward, to just 1 or 2 years later, feeling like I'm back at ground zero. And that's where my argument comes in for these people who say the presidency doesn't really impact you, so you shouldn't let it affect you that way. You're full of shit. The president influences a lot of people, not to mention lower elections that are local, that have a lot more impact on your everyday life. And then some of the other things that they refuse to believe that they need to pass through Congress, that they are now doing backdoor, like the pistol brace ban. Um, we just seen PayPal say that they are going to start charging people 200, or what was it, $2,500 uh, per infraction straight out of your bank account that you link to PayPal for misinformation. And then they come out after they have lost tons in their stocks because people are so outraged to say that they didn't say that, or they didn't mean to. It was a typo, even though this was in their guidelines. It wasn't like they put out a tweet and accidentally auto corrected it to something else. They had paragraphs that they had pre-written out and had lawyers look over before they were published, and they are still trying to deny that wasn't their intent. That was completely their intent. It is just another backdoor way of how they are going after your constitutional rights. I brought up earlier Operation Choke Point, how the banking industry were trying to gatekeep firearms industry from being able to carry out their business and help civilians maintain and be able to properly carry out their Second Amendment. Well, this PayPal $2,500 penalty was a backdoor way to silence and censor things that they don't agree with. Now, what doesn't PayPal agree with? Oh, that's right. Who's in the White? They agree with the party who is in control right now. Who is in the White House right now? So don't tell me that whoever holds power in the White House doesn't fucking matter. That's just way too naive to actually try to go out and convince people on a mass scale. I refuse to believe that. Now, there's tons of things that I just briefly touched upon in this podcast coming back after my break. All of these things are worth looking into on their own, whether it be Operation Choke Point, which is a couple years old by now, but it is out there. You can find tons of information on it, and I believe it is still being carried out, just has shifted not only to include the banking industry, but to include the bigger shipping companies like UPS. You see how much literature has come out about UPS and their handling of firearms, how they are changing their rules and regulations, how they ship them. And now it's come out that when you are shipping these, the companies, the individuals, all the information that they have to disclose to be able to still carry out something that they did, just going to the post office and shipping an item, now can potentially be seen as I guess it would be a private legal registration. And they have come out and said that they hold the rights to be able to do with this information as they please. So that means if you are buying and shipping a firearm, not only are they keeping track of who's selling what, but who is buying what, and they aren't openly discussing what they are prepared or going to do with that information. So it could potentially be a private registration. It could potentially be passed on to the FBI and ATF and seen as a illegal federal registration of firearms. So, like I said, I don't necessarily think that Operation Checkpoint is over. I just think that it's expanded its horizon, seeing that all they were able to carry out when Trump was in office, now they just kind of have a free for all with the assholes who are in power now. And all that's to say is if you truly think that your Second Amendment isn't being hindered, uh, you're insane. Now, one of the things I'll briefly mention before I get off here, because I just heard my kids pull up, is there is I guess it would be a podcast, an interview with Kanye West. I've talked about this in the past where it seemed like I was kind of picking up steam with the podcast, and then I kind of got my legs swept out from underneath me as soon as I started talking about me not really agreeing with all the support that we give Israel. Um, a lot of red pilled people will get the term naming them, if you will. But so I'm sure everybody has heard at this point in time that Kanye West has come out on social media and pretty much declared a state of self-defense. And a lot of people said a state of war. DEFCON 3 is not when you're on the offense, it's when you're preparing to protect yourself. So he is potentially trying to say, and from what I'm interpreting him saying is he is going to openly be defending himself against the Jewish media. So yeah, you guys should, when you get a chance, look up the latest interview of Kanye West. I believe probably if you type in DEFCON 3, you'll probably get some results. But the name is so similar to Drinking Bros. I want to say Drinking Bros, but it's not. It's like the Drinking Guys podcast or something, but I can't remember off the top of my head what this podcast is called. But they're interviewing Kanye West, and you can tell he's like super frustrated and is probably saying some things that he will potentially have some backlash on, but it's marginal compared to the backlash he is already seeing because of his statements about defending himself against the Jewish media. But I gotta tell you, for as much as I dislike Kanye West, and I know there's a lot of Kanye West fans out there, there has to be for the amount of money that guy has made. Um, he's really on point in this interview, pointing out a lot of things that I think it's truly going to take a black guy being attacked by the Jewish media for people to really start paying attention to it. Because if any other, white conservative were to come out and have these complaints, they're probably just going to be brushed aside or used to deplatform whoever is making these claims, right? And one of the things I thought was really worth taking note is he said, you know, isn't it ironic that it's a Jewish company that's coming and stopping Kanye West from bringing to market a shirt that says "White Lives Matter"? And I don't really want to get into it right now because there's a lot of like little nuancy things that can put credit to that statement, and it's just like I said, too much to go into now because I'm getting ready to get off here. But it's definitely worth looking into. Like I said, I think that, like I said, as much as I dislike Kanye West, he's might be the right person at the right time to actually have people take notice and put a little bit of credit to all of the people who have come before him that have had some type of grounds for saying, look what the Israel lobby is doing to the conservative party. Look at all the money we are sending to Israel in a time where we are, trillions in debt. Doesn't that count for something? Look at how many times people have been genocided or enslaved that is being disregarded, while there is only one group of people that is held above it all. And most of the time when you make statements like that, you're automatically labeled a you know, anti-Semitic. But how many people are going to have to come and speak out before this is undeniable? So go check that interview out. Like I said, maybe I'll post a link to the podcast on my Facebook later on after I get off here. But yeah, just if you are one of those people who actually believes that having a civil conflict is the worst case scenario and that the voting booth still holds power and that is what you're holding hope in, ask yourself if it is truly hope you are trying to keep, or is it actually fear that you believe that we can't win that battle? So with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. Hopefully we're live on YouTube and Facebook. I haven't had time to check. I just wanted to get on here, let it be known I'm back from the break. The beginning of October always kicks my ass financially, with my time, everything else. But we're back at it, and with this nice little break I took, it allowed for some things to actually happen. Kanye West stuff. There's Alex Jones stuff that's going on. We're about to go to fucking nuclear war with Russia because Biden's a fucking retard. So there's that. You got oh yeah, my girls are calling me. So we'll get into that another time. I love you guys. Stay safe. Stay prepared. God bless. America first. Peace, y'all.